I am not a dress. We are women. We are warriors of steel. Woman is something no man will ever feel. Woman is not a skill that any man can hone. Woman is our word, and it is ours alone.
Hello, my name is Anne McElhenney.
And I'm Phelim and Ann.
Welcome to the Anne and Phelim Scoop.
Yes, indeed.
How are you feeling?
Good. I could do with more sleep, I suppose.
Yeah, we all could.
How am I? How am I on? Tell me, I don't know how I am.
Still recovering from the Emmys, right?
Yes. Oh, God, what joy, what diversity.
We watched the Emmys so you didn't have to.
Yes. Basically...
So proud.
So proud.
Just so proud.
Very funny. So when that actress came out and called Ron DeSantis the Grand Wizard, right? They put a clip on Twitter, and I wrote it underneath it in block capitals. So brave, right?
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of likes on the tweet, and half the likes have
thought you were being serious.
Yes.
Oh dear. That's
literally half of them.
That's slightly.
And they're all got their pronouns there, and they all think I'm being serious, and I'm going. I think you might learn. You may be an actor, but you don't know how to read a script when sarcasm's involved.
Yes. Okay. Well, in this week's podcast, we're going to talk about America the Beautiful, which has become very much America the Ugly, America the Banana Republic.
Yes.
With the indictment of Trump. But don't despair. We have inspiration from a wonderful 14-year-old, from a remarkable 14-year-old Irish girl. We'll bring you that interview.
Poetry Corner.
And if you ever needed further inspiration or motivation to make sure your children don't have iPhones, don't have access to the internet, basically. We have the most motivational, most inspirational story ever about the value of children not having phones.
Okay.
That'll be the happy ending. But we're going to start today's program actually just talking about the indictment of Trump. And I think the best summary that we found and the best description of this whole awful situation was in the Wall Street Journal, the Wall Street Journal editorial board, which basically said, and I'm quoting very liberally from them today, whether you love or hate Donald Trump, his indictment by President Biden's Justice Department is a fraught moment for American democracy. For the first time in US history, the prosecutorial power of the federal government has been used against a former president who's also running against the sitting president. This is far graver than the previous indictments by a rogue New York prosecutor, and it'll roil the 2024 election and US politics for years to come. And just to look at what exactly he's been accused of. So there's 37 charges against Trump that are related to his handling of classified documents. 31 of the counts are for violating the ancient and seldom enforced Espionage Act for the willful retention of national defence information. But as the Wall Street Journal and others have pointed out, what's really extraordinary and what's an amazing standout is that the legally notable, that it's striking and legally notable that the indictment never mentions the Presidential Records Act that allows a president access to documents, both classified and unclassified, once he leaves office. It allows for good faith negotiations with the National Archives, yet the indictment assumes that Mr. Trump had no right to take any classified documents, which does not fit at all with the spirit or the letter of the PRA, which was written by Congress to recognise that such documents had previously been the property of former presidents. If the Espionage Act means presidents can retain any classified documents, then the PRA is all but meaningless. This will be part.
That's
yes.
What the Wall Street Journal is saying is that if presidents get charged for holding classified documents, former presidents, then the Presidential Records Act is a meaningless law. So.
And of course, what they're doing, what the Wall Street Journal goes on to do, which obviously a lot of you have been doing, and it's completely obvious, is to look at the context of all of this and what public opinion will be, and to remember that Mr. Biden had old classified files stored in his Delaware garage next to his sports car, and when that news came out, he didn't sound very apologetic. He said, "My Corvette's in a locked garage, okay?" So it's not like they're sitting out in the street. Mr. Biden said. AJ Garland appointed another special counsel, Robert Hur, to investigate, but justice is not going to indict Mr. Biden. And of course, if you're talking about willful,
willful treatment of records and confidential material.
We don't have to think too far back to the basement email server that Hillary Clinton used as Secretary of State.
This is all, by the way, just to repeat,
and again, this is from the Wall Street Journal editorial board. FBI Director James Comey said in 2016 that she and her colleagues were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive, highly classified information. According to him, 113 emails, including information that was classified when it was sent or received. 8 were top secret. About 2,000 others were later up-classified to confidential. This was the statement Mr. Comey ended by declaring Mrs. Clinton, this was the statement. Mr. Comey, he ended by declaring Mrs. Clinton free and clear. No reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case.
So it looks like
Comey
we have unreasonable prosecutors in this case then.
And just to kind of, basically, the Wall Street Journal kind of end by saying the seal has been broken, that this is such a breach of precedent, such a breach of the division between, the powers of the state and
Funny,
politics.
What it reminds me of, so it is very Banana Republic. Like there's Berlusconi who just died. I mean, the moment he was no longer president or prime minister of Italy, they immediately started prosecuting him for all kinds of,
everything.
He sold a company and didn't, all this, just arcane financial crimes. Anything to get him not able to run for election again. And another signifier of a banana republic that I've always noticed, and I always was very critical of before, was when the dictator gave up power, he said one of the conditions was, I want lifetime immunity from prosecution.
Yes.
And it's always struck me as like, how on earth why should you get lifetime immunity from prosecution for your crimes committed whilst you were the dictator or the president? And of course, now I see, because the power of the state is all powerful, they will find a crime for you, especially in these bureaucratic states, which America has now become. And by the way, Republicans, when you passed this bipartisan legislation to impress the New York Times about how reasonable you were, it's going to be used. It's used against Trump now, and it's going to be used against you next.
Yeah.
They've got him up in New York for campaign finance violations. McCain-Feingold, remember that? The campaign finance laws? McCain-Feingold creating these arcane rules, just massive rules and bureaucracy about campaign finance that people accidentally break the law all the time, and they're trying to make out to be, for a secret payment, to be a breach of campaign finance. They tried to get John Edwards with it back in the day, and now they're trying to get Trump with it. So Republicans next time, I'm even going back as far, and we know this from personal experience, the Americans with Disabilities Act. That's very, very honourable, and New York Times really approved of that one, and basically it's a boondoggle for trial lawyers and criminals to go into a bathroom and say the door is 1 inch shorter than it's supposed to be, the parking place is 1 inch shorter than it's supposed to be, the mirror is not low enough, I can't see it in my wheelchair, and all these businesses have to pay $5,000 a violation to a private lawyer.
Yeah.
So this is as much a Republican problem as it is. The Democrats are just they pushed it through with Republican support, these laws. Not pushed it through. The Republicans embraced it. And now they're showing their true face and using it against Republicans. So
the last line of this Wall Street Journal, I just want to read this because I think it's very, very important. It was once unthinkable in America that the government's awesome power of prosecution would be turned on a political opponent. That seal has now been broken. It didn't need to be. However cavalier he was with classified files, Mr. Trump did not accept a bribe or betray secrets to Russia. Mm-hmm. And just to understand all of these counts against him, which again 35 I think in total, they amount to 100 years in prison, which is of course is exactly what they're really looking for. Actually, they would love to put him in prison for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And let's watch and see what happens. But it's a very dark, and I think a lot of people said that it's a very dark and scary time. And we're spending quite a bit of time in the near future, Phelim, looking at the legal system being politicised, the legal system
Yes.
being prey
Yes.
to mob
Yes.
justice.
Yes.
And we will bring more of that to you anon. We have a very big project we want.
And can I just
start teasing you about?
Yes. Can I just tell the never Trumpers out there too?
Yes.
You know, you may be laughing and you may be happy and you may be saying I told
Feeling
you so.
smug.
Yeah. They're coming for you next, and especially if you're one of these Republican never Trumpers. They're coming for you. This is just to soften up the justice system, to get the public used to it, and then they'll come for you because no one will care, by the way.
Yeah.
No one will care for you. The Democrats don't like you, and the Republicans don't like you. And if you offend the wrong powerful political lobby group or person, then you will be next. Or your family or someone you know will be next, and you'll be crying about the politicisation of the judicial system, and we can then say, I told you so. It won't give us any pleasure, but that is where it's coming. That's what it's coming to.
Yeah. So earlier, yesterday actually, I spoke to a wonderful young teenager, Irish teenager, a girl. Yeah,
so you first heard of her when she addressed or spoke at a Belfast rally in Ireland, or a rally somewhere in Ireland, which was for basically women's rights.
Yeah, stand up. I think women stand up, or stand up for women.
Women speak out, or
women speak up. One of those kind of things.
Basically, the trans lobby is in Ireland and in here is destroying women's sports. It's destroying women's spaces.
Yes.
In prisons, in
locker rooms,
in sports,
toilets,
in rape crisis centres, in schools, and the women are no longer. There's no such thing as no longer a such thing as women's rights anymore, because a fully anatomical man who identifies as a woman in Ireland now can go where women can go and is entitled to what women are entitled to. So this is a major threat to women
everywhere. And what's extraordinary actually is, and we were talking about this just the other day, Phelim, is how few people are standing up. Like the number of voices it's incredibly low. There's no leadership. In politics, there's no one taking a leadership stand on this. Like nobody's standing up for this. Literally nobody. There's one politician in Ireland.
One in Ireland. There are some in the UK, but they're very, very small.
Very few and far between. And then there's 𝑗K Rowling, who's obviously has more money than God, or whatever they say, that kind of thing. Like, she's very, very wealthy. But, even though she's very, very wealthy, what she has done by taking a public stand is taking herself, she's ostracized from polite society. And from the elites are not inviting her to nice things.
But in terms of, in the UK, there's some response. But I just saw this morning a Scottish Labour MP who invited women to speak on this issue at the House of Commons has now had to cancel the event following pressure from her own party. So she invited women to speak about a
women's issue
that's very important to women at Parliament, and because men who pretending to be women have objected, then they get to rule the world.
Imagine what the suffragettes would have to say about all of this. You know, after them, throwing themselves in front of the horses at the Grand National, dying for this cause, starving themselves to death, for us to come to at this moment where men basically are having a veto over women being allowed to speak.
I have to say, just to correct you, the suffragettes wouldn't have thrown themselves in front of a horse at the Grand National. They threw themselves in front of a horse at the Derby, which is a much higher class.
Oh,
if you're going to kill yourself in front of a horse, you wouldn't. The Grand National is very, very,
So in the midst of all of this silence from our courageous, not courageous politicians, it's so inspiring and motivational to come across a young 14-year-old Irish schoolgirl who decided to speak up. So she explains the story during this interview. But
amazing. Let's go over to
let's go over to this interview.
She is anonymous because she is quite correctly frightened about retaliation of all sorts,
and retaliation through the school system, and you'll understand why when you hear her speak. So she's just wonderful. We'll go over to that right now. We want to welcome lovely Brandubh to our show, and that sounds like an unusual name because it's a pseudonym for a schoolgirl in Ireland who is 14 years old and is a total rock star. She appeared recently in Belfast reciting a poem that she wrote inspired by events at her school. I think we should, first of all, hello, Bran, and welcome to our podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me on.
It's great, And I know you're a bit nervous. Don't be nervous at all. We're all friends here. We read, I mean, obviously, you know, and by the way, Brandubh has been already on the Megyn Kelly show, so I mean, very impressive. One of Megyn Kelly's producers saw what you did in Belfast and said, "My God, we have to have this girl on." I think we should start by asking you, if you wouldn't mind, to recite your poem, because it's really, really powerful. And I could recite it, but I think it'd come much better with your voice. Can you do that for us?
Yes.
Please.
I am not a dress. We are women. We are warriors of steel. Woman is something no man will ever feel. Woman is not a skill that any man can hone. Woman is our word, and it is ours alone. I am not a dress to be worn on a whim. A man in a dress is none the less a him. Women are not simply what we wear. If this offends you, I do not care. I am not an idea in any man's mind, and my purpose in life is not to be kind. So while my rights are trampled every day of the week, I will not stand by being docile and meek. I am not defined by sexist lies. There is more to woman than that shallow guise, that guise of dresses, bikinis, and skirts. Those clothes are not what womanhood is worth. I am not a bitch, a turf, a whore, a slag, hysterical, a witch, a slut, a hag. No, I am a woman, I'm a female, who will not let her rights be put up for sale. I am not defined by what men are not, so to hell with cis misogynistic rot. I am a woman, I'm not a subset of my sex. If this makes me a dinosaur, so be it, I'm a T-Rex. I am not a bleeder nor a menstruator, a womb carrier or uterus haver. Those words and phrases are such a sham. Just call me woman, it is who I am. We are women, we are warriors of steel. Woman is something no man will ever feel. Woman is not a skill that any man can hone. Woman is our word, and it is ours alone.
Oh, God. Unbelievable. This is, I mean, well done you. Congratulations. You're a rock star, as I said earlier. And you're, by the way, a real inspiration for all of us out here living in this crazy world. Tell us, if you would, what's the back? How did you come up with writing this poem? What was the setting? What was happening in your life that made you want to write this?
Well, I'd been having a pretty hard time in school with gender ideology. I started secondary school in September 2021, and within a few weeks they started pushing gender ideology on me, and I asked questions, and because of that, teachers and schoolmates had started making my life very difficult. So I got very involved with this fight against gender ideology, and my mum heard about this event called Women's Space to Speak that was happening in Dublin in November 2022, I think it was. Yeah, it was. And yeah, we went there, and one woman got up and she said a poem that she had written. And I'd previously heard a lot of other women reciting poems that they had written about gender ideology and, you know, why it was such rubbish. So I said, hey, I think I can do that. And I did.
Oh my God, and you did it really successfully. I mean, I can't imagine what those other poems were like, but I can't imagine anyone wrote a better poem than you. I mean, honestly, it's really great. And you're just great. And I know I'm sure your mother is incredibly proud of you. I'm proud of you, and I've never even met you. You're just fabulous. So in your school, for example, like, are there, you know, are there other girls in the school who are throwing their eyes up to heaven and saying, what the hell's going on here? Or are you kind of isolated? Or are they all going along with it, going along to get along? Or what's the atmosphere like?
They all go along with it, yes. I'm the only one who questions it. I think a couple of them are bright girls. I don't get how they can fall for this. So I think they see through it, but they're too scared
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
not support it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm isolated.
And I heard you say it somewhere else. Maybe it was on Twitter. You wrote about like the science teacher. I mean, like, hilarious, right? So that the science teacher took you aside.
Yes, she did.
So what did she explain to you now, the science teacher?
So just to give a bit of background, the week before, my school had celebrated this thing called Stand Up Awareness Week. And this week, well, it's supposed to be a week to say, you shouldn't bully LGBTQ plus students. And like, I don't have a problem with that. Obviously, no student should be bullied.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't about that. It was about shoving TQ plus propaganda down everyone's throats.
Yeah.
So I asked questions when this stuff was being taught to us. So the next week, my science teacher pulled me out of class because I had been reported for making offensive comments the previous week. And, well, she expected me to be horrified that I had been accused of transphobia. But I disappointed her very much so. I said, well, I retaliated and I said, no, I was just pointing out reality. It's not transphobic to talk about reality. But she kept arguing with me. And in the end, the argument stopped with her telling me, being a man or a woman has nothing to do with your reproductive system. And this is my science teacher.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
She teaches me science.
I'm so sorry. By the way, I am really sorry that you're having to go through that. This, and it's bad enough, by the way. I mean, and I can say this as a teacher and as somebody who obviously went through school myself. I mean, secondary school is hard enough. And by the way, for Americans listening to this, secondary school is a combination of middle school and high school. And it's a hard enough thing anyway. It's hard enough growing up and going through puberty and all that. All of that is hard enough. Doing your exams, trying to study, all of that's hard enough. Without this kind of, you're being asked to believe something that is completely insane. It's so unfair. Go on.
I'd just like to point out that as well, when this stuff was being taught to my class, it was mostly 12-year-olds in the class. This was being taught to 12-year-olds.
I saw you recently also mentioned, by the way, and it's interesting you say 12-year-olds, because you also recently on Twitter, I saw you mentioned about your brother, your young brother, I think it was maybe last year or something. So he was in a Montessori school, Montessori, for little people, for little tiny young people, and that the school had, I think, a couple of years ago, you can correct me on the dates, put up a flag outside the school, some kind of a LGBTQ kind of whatever flag, and your mum got in touch with the school and their response. So tell us that story.
So, my brother was in Montessori last year, and he was one of the younger ones, so sometimes the youngest ones go on and do another year. So last year, they stuck a pride flag up outside the school building,
Mm-hmm.
well, the Montessori building. My mum complained about it, and it was taken down, which seemed like a good thing that the teachers were taking feedback. So, this year, my mum was delighted to see that for Pride Month they hadn't stuck a flag up. My mum told me, because I'd been really worried about my brother, I didn't want him getting exposed to this, and my mum told me, there's no flag up outside this year. But then it turned out that the Progress Pride flag had been stuck up inside instead of outside.
Oh my God.
So it seems the teachers were trying to hide this from parents. Because the students, the children attending the Montessori, they're picked up outside. Yeah. So anyway.
Oh God, yeah. Oh God, desperate. And it's interesting, actually. I mean, I'm obviously a lot older than you, right? But you, and I mean, obviously going through your tweets, and you and I have been in touch on Twitter and all that kind of thing, and I've been going through your tweets, and you have the same questions that I have, by the way. And I'm curious what answers you got, because I think you asked somebody, what did plus stand for, right? LGBTQ, whatever. What's plus, And by the way, there's some very disturbing answers to what plus is, by the way. Am I right in saying that you asked somebody what did all these letters mean and what does plus mean?
Yes, this story terrifies me to this day, but during stand-up week in 2021, I asked one of my teachers, what is in the plus? And I asked, could something like paedophilia be in the plus? And initially, he said no way. But then he reconsidered. Well, he said, no way, that's illegal. But then he reconsidered and he said, well, come to think of it, being gay used to be illegal as well, so maybe.
Oh my God. Oh God.
I
Yeah.
know, that just.
That's wild. And another question for you. And I mean, I know obviously because I was a teacher, I know I've loads of friends who were teachers in Ireland, and I certainly know of one school in Ireland where they started, and it was a girls' school, a large girls' school in Ireland, where they, started to allow girls to identify as boys. So the school, I suppose, it suddenly became anyway, and had suddenly, and that population kind of ballooned quite quickly from like 1 to the last time I checked was I think it was 8 or 9. Are you having that same experience in your school? Are there people? Is this contagion happening on front of your eyes?
At the start of the year, there wasn't anyone really, and then a kid picked it up from TikTok, I think, or something, and then a few kids started saying they were non-binary or whatever, whatever new identity they have these days. And it's so sad. I met a girl outside school once, and we'd been talking for 5 minutes, and I liked her. But then she said, "Are you LGBTQ plus?" And I said, because it's just such a weird question. Why would you ask someone that? And she
Yes.
said, "Oh, I am." And I asked her what letters, and she told me she's an asexual, gender fluid lesbian. So I equated it to kids used to collect these things called Pokemon cards, but nowadays they just collect labels instead.
Oh my God. Oh God, that's so well put. God, I mean, what? So without sounding like your granny, by the way, what do you want to do when you grow up? What are your interests? What do you think? What do you see in your future?
I'd like to carry on writing, definitely.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there. I mean, I think you're a wonderful writer, a strong writer. You have a powerful voice, and I know that you're on here anonymously, and I think that's super wise on your behalf and on your mum's behalf. Very, very wise. You can be much more effective when you're not being, because I think you would be the subject of extraordinary bullying. Tell me, you've called yourself Brandubh for people who are non-Irish speakers. Can you tell us what that means and why you chose that? Black Raven, right?
Yeah, that's. I've just always liked ravens, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Okay. Very good.
Just,
yeah. And so, are you out for the summer now? Are you free?
Yeah.
Oh God.
School ended a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, I'm so glad. And what stage are you at now? Like, so you're now. Are you going to go and do the what is it? The intercert next year? Is it called that anymore?
It's the
junior cert.
I'll be doing it.
You'll be doing the junior cert next year. Oh my God! Well, I'm sure you're going to wipe the floor with them. I mean, I can't tell you how impressed I am with you. You're just great, and don't stop. I mean, and you're going to give inspiration to so many people. I mean, for people on Twitter finding you, like I found you on Twitter, and I was like, oh my God, this is so great, because I do think Ireland. I get shocked. I mean, we left Ireland 13 years ago or something like that, and I get shocked every time I go home. At what is going on, and we know. Yeah. I know from a friend of mine. Like I know that in Ireland they're giving puberty blockers to very, very young children in Ireland. I mean, that's happening, that the medical establishment is going along with that, and no one is standing up, So there you are, a 14-year-old girl standing up and speaking truth to power. That's exactly what you're doing, by the way. You're speaking truth to power. And so few people do that, and so few people have courage. So you're a great girl, and don't stop. And don't, you're not scared, and don't allow these bullies, because they're frightened of the truth. That's what they're frightened of.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And anyway, you're just great. And I want to thank you for spending the time with us today, because we're very, very grateful, and you're just great. And thank you for reciting the poem and all of that. And maybe we'll check in with you again, maybe in a couple of years, or maybe in a year's time, and see what else is going on, because it's more and more people are becoming aware of how much of a problem this is, and people are hearing stories, very, very sad stories as well, of children who are particularly children who are, and I don't know if you've noticed this, the children that are very vulnerable to this ideology are children that have other things going on. For example, maybe autism, or in some cases are extremely gifted, extremely intelligent, slightly the oddball in the situation, yes. Which there's always been oddballs, by the way. And those oddballs, by the way, I'll tell you, Jeff Bezos, I'll bet you any money was an oddball in school. Those kind of people, those kind of extremely intelligent people. Elon Musk, do you not think he was an oddball? But he's just an oddball, that's all. It doesn't mean he's a woman. It doesn't mean he's some kind of middle sex something. He's, just an oddball. It's okay to be different, and you don't have to immediately... And also, I think there's an awful lot of young ones feeling anxiety. I think there's an incredible high degree of anxiety, probably a lot of it connected with social media, certainly hasn't helped. Do you notice that?
Yes, like everyone at school is just addicted to their phones.
Yeah.
Because that's why I think social media can be so damaging.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't on social media before I started my Twitter account. But of course, that was for a very different reason. That was for, activism, something
yes.
that's actually useful, not
yes.
just scrolling through TikTok videos.
Oh my God. And those TikTok videos are so extraordinary. And I don't know if you've come across, I was going to stop the interview, but I actually want to ask you something else. Have you come across, there's an Irish woman in Florida called 𝙁𝙊𝙇𝙊𝙇𝙊𝙒 Gallagher, who is on TikTok. She's a surgeon who does this double mastectomies on girls. And she's Irish, like she's super Irish, like no doubt about it. And she has a ton of these videos, which, I don't know, tell your mother to look. Maybe you shouldn't look. They're very disturbing, though. They're really very disturbing. And she is very, very proudly, cutting off healthy limbs, healthy organs of young girls and doing all kinds of things to boys and stuff. I mean, just horrible. So this is everywhere. It's a massive contagion. But anyway, I'm going to stop and thank you for your time today, Brandubh. Thank you so much. And have a fabulous summer, by the way. Have fun, because this stuff is heavy and it's upsetting. And, there is hope. And you've given hope to so many people. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So the thing that I thought was amazing there, Phelim, was the science teacher. So the science teacher, I mean, I know she already told the story, but I just want to repeat it again, that the science teacher took her aside to explain to her that gender and sex were not the same thing, and that that gender was not observable. Like unbelievable. I mean, people. Science teachers should lose their job. And I spoke to her mother and not on the recording, but I spoke to her mother who basically said it's heartbreaking. Her mother basically said to me, it is a heartbreak to have a lovely child that you love being forced to go into a school system
yes.
like that every day, and to realise what they're doing in the schools. And so that's Ireland, by the way, Christian Ireland, by the way, old Catholic Ireland. So it's exactly what's going on here. And I wanted to bring this one story to people's consciousness, which I thought was amazing. We just heard about this at the weekend. So I think it happened like, what do we see what the date was? I think it happened like in the middle of May, but I just love this. In Michigan. And if you hadn't heard this story, it's a great story to motivate you with young ones. If you're trying to say to some children in your life, we don't want you to have a phone. We don't want you to have a mobile phone, and they're going, going nuts about it. Maybe give them this story and see if it motivates them. So, this happened in Michigan. A Michigan boy who recently stopped a school bus from crashing after the driver lost consciousness leapt into action because he was the only passenger not distracted by an electronic device, according to a report by CBS. And this story is taken from The Guardian. On Sunday, as I said, this is about a month old. 2 weeks after, I only heard about this, that's why I'm bringing it to you now. 2 weeks after 7th grader Dylan Reeves, young fella, regained control of a school bus when its driver became unconscious, the network reported that the boy's parents' refusal to provide him a cell phone paid off in a big way. Dylan's father, Steve, told CBS, "What else are you going to do when you don't have a phone? You're going to look at people. You're going to notice stuff. You're going to look out the window. It's a very powerful lesson. Maybe a change the world kind of lesson." In the CBS report, several passengers on the bus with Dylan, who are the equivalent of year 8 in the UK, revealed that they were immersed in their electronic devices when the driver began to lose consciousness as they were being driven home from school on April 26th. I had my AirPods in, said one student, referring to a popular brand of wireless headphones. A second student added, I was looking at my phone. And yet another student said, I was on my phone playing a little game. In a video that was captured by a bus security camera before it went viral, Dylan can be seen rushing up to the steering wheel after noticing that the driver had passed out during a medical emergency. Dylan stepped on the brakes, steered the bus away from traffic and eventually brought it to a stop as other students yelled in panic from their seats. The driver was eventually treated for an unspecified medical condition.
Use your phone for what it's supposed to be for.
Yes.
Call 911. Go ahead.
Dylan, speaking to CBS, said, I just knew what to do at that moment. The bus was swerving off the road. Dylan was widely praised as a hero online and by his school district superintendent. The actions of the student who helped stop the bus made all the difference today, and I could not be prouder of his efforts, the superintendent said. Dylan's parents said their son's heroic actions were reason enough to hold off on getting him a phone even more now. When asked by CBS to comment on his parents' decision to withhold giving him a phone even longer, Dylan shrugged and said, whatever, my parents are old school. Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? Good for the parents, by the way. I mean, and we just know because, horribly tragic. This past weekend, we heard about this awful bus accident in Australia where over 10 people are dead so far. So this is a crowd of children on this bus. They could have all been killed, but for this one kid who was paying attention, basically.
It's very interesting. All these stories are connected, by the way, because remember that those people we know in Dublin, and and they're horrendously liberal, right? But
horribly.
Yes, I didn't say horribly. Right, I suppose horrendously. Let's just say
fabulously
liberal.
Fabulously liberal.
And basically, them and all the parents are basically banning their kids from having phones.
Yes.
Right. So they know. They know that phones are destructive to young brains, and look, they're onto something. You may take your children to church on Sunday. You may speak to them 2 or 3 times a week for half an hour over dinner, whatever. The kids are going to school and being taught nonsense at school. Then they're coming home and spending 2 to 3 hours, an hour on the bus, another hour before they go to bed on YouTube and on TikTok.
More directly.
And they are learning that men can become women and yet you're born in the wrong body, and that Trump is evil. And not even, just your few hours of conversation it's very difficult to stand up against 8 hours of indoctrination at school, topped up with a couple of hours of indoctrination from a phone.
It's kind of, I think with this trans thing, and we're going to be talking a lot more about it, and we have a secret project which we will be bringing to you. We can't say anything about it just yet, but I think I've said before in the podcast, and I think I want to say it again. There's something really demonic and diabolical about this trans thing, with children having their healthy limbs cut off and having them stuffed full of hormones that they don't need, and being told all kinds of things. There's something very specifically new, I feel, has happened here, where every institution has been captured, so that there's no leadership. A confused child whom the parents are saying this is absolute rubbish. This is complete madness. You're not well. Whatever it is that the parents are trying to do to try and calm a child down from doing something really destructive to themselves. That is irreversible, by the way. That's why Abigail Shrier's book is called Irreversible Damage. While parents are trying to do that protection, meanwhile, you have every institution, so the school, so the medical establishment, the psychiatric establishment, the universities, the television, all of the social media, all of it is saying that this is a good. This is that a child from the age of a baby can make these kind of horrific decisions, and that people should affirm that we all have to shut up and just affirm. And it's completely mad. It's completely awful. And yes, the one thing that I want to say is we can't walk away. We can't say I can't. We can't. Everyone has to stand up. That's what leadership is really needed now, and there's so few people standing up.
Alternative voices are needed, so you need to be an alternative voice, because the kids are not hearing any opposition to this. Yes. The establishment is not hearing any opposition to this. I don't know if Trump has really spoken much about this. I think Trump needs to get behind this, because this is talk about swing votes. I mean, but by the way, so many parents are in favour of it now because they've been corrupted, and sometimes parents like to abuse their kids. I know many liberal parents who are scared bleepless about this, and they're saying, and they've been told this fake statistic that if you don't affirm them, the child will commit suicide. Complete nonsense.
Pseudoscience.
Pseudo statistics, and doesn't take into any account. Well, it's a really bad study, and it doesn't take into account the fact, and this is the reality, all these people who say I am really a girl or I am really a boy have other comorbidities. They have other difficulties. They have
autism sometimes. They have maybe personality difficulties. Maybe they have mental health issue.
They have
maybe
anorexia. They have
or there's something like there's something like extremely talented. They might have, there's something else going on.
Many things
that is not, and this is one of the big things that came out of the Tavistock Centre in the UK, where the Tavistock Centre, which was a centre for doing this, this surgery on children, butchery on children, and was kind of a world leader, the Tavistock Centre, which is now being closed, being shuttered because of doctors basically eventually standing up and saying this is wrong, this is extremely damaging. So there is a report now from the Tavistock Centre, and part of what that says is that these children who were reporting there, who were arriving at this being referred to this Tavistock Centre, had all these other things wrong with them that were not being addressed at all, that everything was being reduced down to this one thing, that this was this one salvo, this one thing that would save them from all these other things that were going on. So, but we will be talking a lot more about that, and as I said, you can't not be interested. This is basically the end of humanity, by the way, if this thing takes off as much as it has. Well, and by the way, it's already the numbers are crazy.
Yes,
300,000 children apparently, according to the New York Times, 300,000 children in the United States of America identifying as trans.
So funny, I think it's actually been a rather optimistic show this week. With those two, are they both 14-year-old? No, what's the seventh? Okay, what's seventh grade in this country?
In this country, what age is seventh
Mr.
grade?
Mr. Producer,
Mr.
13.
Okay, so a 13 and a 14-year-old.
12.
12.
Two young teenagers, even less than a teenager, give us inspiration.
Yes.
That things are not awful, but I think in both cases, by the way, both sets of those children have fabulous parents, by the way.
They're also they're very unique, and the fact that we're talking about them means they're standing out, and maybe we need more people to stand out so these people aren't standing out.
And actually, one point I wanted to make about the 14-year-old girl that you heard earlier from Ireland, and Phelim made this point. I mean, the poem is extraordinary, and by the way, we're going to have the poem up in the show notes. But the extraordinary thing about that is that no part of the mainstream media in Ireland have highlighted that poem, which is an extraordinary poem in its own right.
Yes.
And she's not been celebrated in Ireland, but she's getting celebrated. We've had her on our podcast. Megan Kelly has had her on her podcast as well. So
maybe Gal Gadot could do one of those celebrity, song
readouts.
Read a line, a celebrity doing each line. I am not a dress, I am not
it's great.
A bleep. I am not, So I mean, look. We are very interested in this topic. We will be revisiting this topic very shortly in a very, very, very interesting way. Watch this space.
If you'd like to help us, by the way, do something very creative in this space to get this message out, this story out, the truth out
yes.
about what's going on. Please do support us, and you can do that very simply by going to unreportedstoriesociety.com, unreportedstoriesociety.com, and donate wildly.
Yes,
we need you, because we're doing what no other 501c3 is doing, which is using the arts to tell the truth, to tell stories that the mainstream media will not report on.
Okay, well, we'll see you next week, and we're going to have a very interesting interview next week. We're going to interview hopefully someone who's just published a book about finding happiness through God. So we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.